Okay, so since Mrs. Rivera isn't here today, you are still going to do some notes as if I'm here. You're just going to watch the video, and what I recommend you do is open up a new document, either in Google Docs or in Microsoft Word, and have it side by side with the video. And I'm going to display the notes on the screen as I go through them. So we've completed PowerPoint, and the next thing that we're doing is databases, which is something that most people aren't familiar with. So we're going to call this section Introduction to Databases. The first thing we need to talk about is what is a database, the definition of it. And for the purposes of what we're doing, a database is an electronic collection. But really, a database can be anything, does not have to be computerized. So the true definition is that it's an organized collection of information and something else that makes it unique is that it's made to make retrieval of specific information easy. An example of an old database not related to computers would be a phone book. People don't use them much anymore because so many people don't have landline phones. Also, nowadays, if someone wants to find a number, they Google it instead of opening up a phone book. But that's the exact example of what a database is. Organized easily, so if I did pull it open, I could look under last name to find someone's phone number, or I could go in the back and look alphabetically in the yellow pages if I'm trying to locate a business. So we're going to be doing the same type of thing, but we're going to be using the computer to do it. Most of the websites that you use are actually databases. For example, Amazon. You go to Amazon's website, you're searching for something that you're looking to buy. You're basically just searching their database. Okay, so in this class, we use a specific database program. We use Microsoft Access 2016. When we get into it, you'll notice a lot of similarities to Microsoft Word, to Excel, and to PowerPoint, but because it is such a unique program, you also will see some very major differences. But some of the layout is very similar. Alright, so if you're creating a database, no matter what program you might be using, there are two main types that you can create. The two main types are what we call a flat database. The other type is what we call RDBMS. A flat database just refers to a collection of information that stores data without linking any fields. So technically, if you were in Microsoft Word and you were typing a document and you decided to create a table that listed people's names and addresses and phone numbers, that would be a flat database because you can't link that information. It's just there. It's not the most powerful, and it's typically what you want to avoid using. What you want to use instead, and what we'll be using, is what's called the RDBMS. We don't usually call it that. What it stands for is Relational Database Management System. And more commonly, we just call it a relational database. And what that means is just that tables can be linked through a common field. I'll give you an example of a database other than Microsoft Access, and that is PowerSchool. So in PowerSchool, on the administrative side, we have all kinds of information. Not only does it store your grades and attendance, it also stores your information from year to year. We could go back and look, if you were a student as early as 2009, we could go into PowerSchool and be able to retrieve that information. It also stores information about your parents, guardians, phone numbers, addresses, and if if something is changed in one part of the database, it's updated in the other part. So that's what we call a relational database. A flat database in the world of technology and information retrieval is actually pretty worthless. Okay, so Microsoft Access, the way that we create it is we create the database file, but you have to do more than that. You have to use what we call database objects. So we're going to talk about the different types of database objects. We are going to be talking about 6 different ones, but we're really, in this class, only going to use 4 of them. And the first one that we're going to talk about is the one that we use the most, and that's just called a table. The table is the basic element in the database, and you'll notice that in the notes I put the word default. That's because when you first create a database, it will produce a table by default. You cannot have a database without having at least one table, and very sophisticated ones will have multiple tables. Okay, and when you see a table in Microsoft Access when we're working with a database, one of the things that you'll notice is that it really just looks like a spreadsheet. It's organized into columns and rows, so you'll have a little bit of familiarity because it's almost like Microsoft Excel. A table is what we're going to be working with in this section of notes. One of the ones that we're going to be working with in our next section is what we call a form. And a form is what I really enjoy using in a database. And this gives you a customized layout. And I'm going to talk to you in a little bit about fields, but with a form you can actually choose which fields you want to include in it. So maybe you have a database that's loaded with all kinds of information, but you only want to simplify it. You can do that with a form. The other thing that you can do with it is that it will display only one record at a time. Again, record's a term we're going to talk about here in just a few minutes. So, for example, in PowerSchool, we have information about all the students in the district. If I were to go into PowerSchool right now and put in Caroline's name and pull her up on the screen, that would be a record. I'm only looking at her information, not any of the other students in the school. Okay, the third one is one that we use all the time on websites, and this is called a query. And a query, the purpose of it is it lets you search for information in a database. Could you imagine having a website like Google, having a website like Amazon, or any other large group of information and not being able to search within it? That wouldn't be worthwhile at all. So a query is where we really use that searching power to get information out of the database. And that'll be something we'll get into later on in this unit. And then we get to the fourth one, and this one is a report. And a report is designed for printing or for displaying data on the screen. If I go back to the PowerSchool example, this would be when you get your report card. That's a report that comes out of PowerSchool. If you've been unfortunate enough to get a deficiency letter in the mail partway through the marking period, if your grade is low, that is also a report. And its whole purpose is for printing and displaying on the screen or for having on paper. When we create a report, it's a lot like a form because you can choose which fields you want to include. You can control the color, you can control the graphics. and reports are going to be something that we're going to be getting to later on. Okay, then we get to 5 and 6. These are ones that we will not be using in here. Databases can be pretty complicated, and I'm trying to simplify this as much as possible as I can for you. So I do want you to know what these last two database objects are, but we will not be using them. Number 5 is a macro.
Look who's last name. Workman.
Okay, hopefully a macro is not bringing back bad memories from Microsoft Word, but it is the same thing in Access as it was in Word, and that is just a pre-recorded shortcut. And macros can be great and they can be very helpful, but in our case, we're not going to mess with them with databases. And the last one is even more sophisticated. This is called a module. Now, a module is a little program inside of a program, or a program inside of a database. And again, it's a little more sophisticated than what I'd like to get into with you. And we're almost finished for the day. I'm going to finish up with a little section on database terminology, and I've been using some of these terms and not truly explaining to you what they are. So we'll just add this and then we'll stop for today. Okay, the 3 terms that we need to talk about are record, field, and entry. And all a record is a collection of information about one individual thing in a database. Okay, if I go on Amazon right now and I am looking for a product, maybe I'm looking for a bird feeder, and it comes up with the search results, and I click on one and pull it up on the screen, and I read the information, the price, the description, the availability, the dimensions. That is a record. I'm not seeing anything for any other bird feeders, just the particular one that I'm looking at. That's a record. Again, to use the PowerSchool example, if I pull up one of you in PowerSchool and look at your information, that is a record. A field is just a category of information that you would find inside of a record. Examples would be first name, last name, address, city, phone number, ID number, things like that. Just the category, not the information itself. And then that leads me to my last one, which we call the entry. The entry is the actual data that's entered into a field. So if my fields are first name, last name, street address, my entry might be Joe, first name, Schmo, last name, 123 Main Street. Those would be the entries. That's the actual data themselves. So what I'd like you to do at this point is save your notes, please. Call it Intro to Databases. I will be back in class tomorrow. And just a reminder, make sure that you have submitted any newspaper assignments if you had anything missing from yesterday. See you tomorrow.